The twin suns of Valoris Prime burned hot over the crimson desert as Daewon walked across the academy grounds. His boots left small prints in the red sand that covered the pathways between buildings. He carried his training gear in one hand and a data pad in the other. Another day of combat simulations awaited him. The Galactic Military Academy stood like a fortress against the desert landscape. 40 different species trained here, learning to fight together, learning to survive together. Daewon had been here for 6 months now. 6 months of being average, 6 months of staying quiet, 6 months of making sure nobody noticed him too much. He liked it that way. Inside the training hall, other cadets were already warming up. Daewon recognized most of them by now. The tall Kargath warriors with their thick gray skin and heavy builds, the quick Sylvian scouts with their forearms, the armored Thraxians who moved slowly but hit like hammers. And there in the corner, stretching carefully, was Hana. Hana was Veloxian. Her people were small compared to most species here. She stood barely up to Daewon's chest, her body covered in smooth violet scales that caught the light. Her large eyes blinked slowly as she saw him approach. Her mouth curved into what passed for a Veloxian smile. "You are late," she said softly. Her voice always sounded musical, even when she was trying to scold him. 5 minutes, Daewon replied, setting down his gear beside hers. "That's not late. That's perfectly timed." Hana made a small clicking sound with her tongue, the Veloxian version of laughter. They had become friends during the first week of academy training. Nobody understood why. Humans and Veloxians had little in common. Humans came from a death world, a planet that tried to kill them in 1,000 different ways. They were built for violence even if they chose peace. Veloxians came from a garden world where nothing ever threatened them. They were built for harmony. But somehow Daewon and Hana had found common ground in late-night talks about philosophy and shared meals in the dining hall. She asked him about Earth's oceans. He asked her about Velox's singing forests. She taught him 3 words in her language. He taught her how to make instant noodles. "Attention," Commander Vrock's voice boomed across the training hall. The massive Kargath instructor stood on the raised platform, his 4 eyes scanning the assembled cadets. "Today we review close combat techniques. Pair up. Show me you have learned something in the past month." Cadets quickly found partners. Daewon moved toward Hana, but a large gray hand landed on his shoulder. "Not today, human," Throm said. The Kargath cadet was almost twice Daewon's size, all muscle and aggression. Behind him stood his 2 constant companions, Grix and Valdis. The little scale needs a real partner, someone who can actually challenge her. Daewon felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice calm. "Hana and I train together every session, which is why she never improves," Valdis added, his voice rough like grinding stone. "She needs to face real warriors." Hana stepped forward, her head held high despite barely reaching Throm's waist. "I choose my own training partner. I choose Daewon." Throm looked down at her and something cruel entered his expression. "Your people always choose wrong. That is why you need others to protect you, why the galaxy keeps you safe like pets." "Enough." Daewon's voice was quiet but firm. He stepped between Throm and Hana. Commander Vrock said, "Pair up." "We're paired. Find someone else." For a moment, Throm stared at him. Daewon could see the calculation in those 4 eyes. Throm was bigger, stronger, trained since birth for combat. Daewon was average height for a human, average build, average everything. His combat scores were middle tier. He posed no real threat. Finally, Throm sneered and turned away. "Keep your pet, human. But one day she will need to face reality without you." As the 3 Kargath moved off, Hana released a breath she had been holding. "Thank you, again." "Don't mention it," Daewon said, but he was watching the Kargath trio. This was the 5th time in 2 weeks they had targeted Hana. The incidents were getting bolder. The training session proceeded normally. Daewon and Hana practiced defensive techniques, him moving at half speed so she could work on her reactions. He pulled his strikes, telegraphed his movements, gave her time to respond. To anyone watching, it looked like 2 average cadets doing average work. But Hana noticed something others didn't. When Daewon demonstrated a technique, there was a precision to his movements that seemed out of place, a control that suggested he was holding back more than necessary. "You are better than you show," she said during a water break. "I have always wondered why." Daewon took a long drink before answering. "The academy is about learning to work together, not about being the best individual fighter. That is not an answer. It's the only answer I have today." That evening, after dinner, they sat on the wall overlooking the desert. The twin suns were setting, painting the red sands even redder. Hana's scales reflected the orange light beautifully. I received news today, she said quietly. The trial of sands has been scheduled. 3 weeks from now, Daewon nodded. Every cadet knew about the trial. It was a week-long survival exercise in the deep desert. Squads of 5 cadets were dropped into the scorched wastes with minimal supplies. They had to navigate 200 kilometers back to the academy while completing objectives and avoiding the desert's many dangers. You are worried, Daewon observed. My people are not built for such places. Heat, predators, violence. These are not things we understand well. Her voice trembled slightly. I am afraid I will fail. Or worse, that my squad will suffer because I am weak. You're not weak, Daewon said firmly. He turned to face her directly. You're different. That's not the same thing. The Kargath do not see a difference. The Kargath see what they want to see. They mistake cruelty for strength. He put a hand on her scaled shoulder, feeling the warm texture beneath his palm. Listen to me, Hana. I promise you will be safe during the trial, whatever it takes. She looked at him with those large, trusting eyes. You cannot promise such things. We do not know what squads we will be in. Then I'll make sure I'm watching your back anyway. She clicked her tongue softly, that Veloxian laugh. You would break academy rules for me? I would break more than rules for you. You're my best friend. They sat in comfortable silence as the suns finally dipped below the horizon. Stars began appearing in the darkening sky, thousands of them representing thousands of worlds. Daewon looked up at them and wondered, not for the first time, if leaving Earth's violence behind was possible, or if violence was something that simply waited inside him, patient and ready. 3 days later, Commander Vrock posted the squad assignments for the Trial of Sands. Cadets crowded around the display screen, searching for their names. Daewon found his quickly, Squad 7. He was paired with Bitna, another human, along with 2 Sylvians and a Thoraxian, a balanced team. Then he searched for Hana's, name Squad 12. His blood went cold as he read the other names in her squad. Throm, Grix, Valdis. 2 other Kargath he didn't recognize. Hana appeared beside him, standing on her toes to see the screen. He heard her sharp intake of breath as she found her assignment. No, Daewon said simply. This isn't acceptable. The assignments are final, Hana whispered. I have already checked. No changes permitted. Daewon stared at the screen, at Hana's name listed among 5 Kargath warriors, at the squad that would take her into the most dangerous desert on the planet. Something cold settled in his chest, a familiar feeling he had worked hard to forget. It will be fine, Hana said, but her voice betrayed her fear. Perhaps they will be professional during the trial. The instructors will be monitoring everything. Daewon said nothing. He was remembering the look in Throm's eyes, the words he had spoken. Why the galaxy keeps you safe like pets. 3 weeks until the trial. He needed to prepare. The dropship shook as it descended toward the scorched wastes. Daewon sat strapped into his seat, surrounded by his squad members. Bitna sat across from him, checking her equipment for the 3rd time. She was a good soldier, focused and skilled. The 2 Sylvians, Quick Strike and Shadow Step, whispered to each other in their clicking language. The Thoraxian, whose name translated to Boulder, sat motionless in his heavy armor. Through the window, Daewon could see the desert below. Red sand stretched endlessly in all directions. Heat waves made the air shimmer. In the distance, he could see the dark shadows of the Razor Canyons. First drop is in 30 seconds, the pilot announced. Squad 7, prepare. Daewon took a deep breath. His pack contained water for 5 days, basic rations, a combat knife, a flare gun for emergencies, and a beacon. Every squad had the same supplies. The trial was designed to test survival skills, tactical thinking, and teamwork. The dropship touched down briefly, sand swirling around it. The door opened to a blast of heat. Go, go, go! The pilot shouted. Squad 7 rushed out into the desert. The dropship lifted off immediately, already heading to the next drop point. Daewon watched it disappear. Somewhere else in this desert, Hana was being dropped with her squad. Squad 12. The Kargath, gather up, Bitna called. She pulled out a navigation device. First waypoint is 40 kilometers northeast. We should reach it by nightfall if we maintain good pace. The squad formed up and started moving. Daewon fell into an easy march beside Bitna. The sun beat down mercilessly. His uniform was designed to regulate temperature, but nothing could completely block this heat. "You are quiet," Bitna observed after an hour of walking. "More than usual." "Thinking," Daewon replied. "About the trial?" "About a friend." Bitna glanced at him. "The Veloxian Hana? I heard she got placed with Throm's squad." Daewon's jaw tightened. "You heard correctly. That is unfortunate. But the instructors are monitoring all squads. They have emergency protocols. Emergency protocols only work if someone activates them in time." They walked in silence for a while longer. The desert was not empty. Daewon spotted movement in the sand several times. Predators lived here, things that burrowed and waited for prey to walk overhead, things with teeth and hunger. By midday, they reached a rocky outcrop that provided shade. The squad stopped to rest and eat. Quickstrike climbed to the top of the rocks, keeping watch. Shadowstep was mapping their route. Boulder sat like a statue, his armored form barely moving. Daewon pulled out his communication device. It was set to monitor emergency channels only. During the trial, regular communication between squads was forbidden, but emergency signals would broadcast to everyone. He checked it every few minutes. Nothing. "You are checking that device often," Boulder observed. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Do you expect trouble?" "I always expect trouble," Daewon replied. Night fell quickly in the desert. The temperature dropped from burning hot to freezing cold within hours. Squad 7 made camp in a sheltered area between large rocks. They set up a watch rotation. Daewon took the first shift. He sat on a high rock watching the stars. His hand rested on his combat knife. The blade was standard issue, good steel, balanced well. He had checked its edge 3 times today. Sharp enough. Below him, his squad slept. They trusted him to keep watch. They trusted each other. That was how squads were supposed to work. He wondered if Hana's squad was sleeping safely. On the second day, Squad 7 reached their first objective. It was a supply cache hidden in a cave system. They had to navigate through tight passages and avoid cave dwellers to reach it. Bitna led the way, and Daewon brought up the rear, making sure nothing followed them. Inside the cache, they found extra water, medical supplies, and a map with their next objective marked. They also found a message console. Daewon accessed it, checking if any squads had sent distress signals. Still nothing. "We are making good time," Bitna said, studying the map. "If we maintain this pace, we will finish the trial early." "Or we could take a more direct route," Daewon suggested, pointing to a path on the map that cut through more dangerous terrain. "That path goes through predator territory. Too risky. It would save us a day, maybe more." Bitna looked at him carefully. "Why do you want to save time?" "The trial has no bonus for finishing early." Daewon met her eyes. "Call it a feeling." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I trust your instincts. We will take the faster route." On the third day, they moved through a valley where the sand was darker, almost black. The bones of previous prey stuck out of the ground like warnings. The Sylvians moved nervously, their forearms ready to draw weapons at any moment. Daewon's communication device chirped. Everyone froze. He pulled it out, hands steady despite his racing heart. An emergency beacon had activated. He checked the coordinates. Squad 12. Hana's squad, but something was wrong. The beacon wasn't a distress call. It was just a location marker, automated, the kind that activated when someone manually triggered it. "What is it?" Bitna asked, coming to his side. Daewon showed her the device. "Emergency beacon. But it is not a distress signal. Someone activated it deliberately." "Which squad?" 12. Understanding flashed across Bitna's face. "Your friend." Daewon looked at the coordinates. They were 40 kilometers west, off their planned route, deep into the desert in a direction that made no tactical sense for Squad 12's objectives. "I need to check on this," he said quietly. "That is against the rules. Squads do not help each other during the trial." "I know." Bitna looked at the rest of Squad 7, then back at Daewon. "I cannot authorize this. It would put our squad behind schedule." "I am not asking for authorization. I am telling you I am going." Daewon began checking his pack, redistributing supplies. "Daewon, if you leave the squad during the trial, you will fail. You could be expelled?" "I understand." Bitna grabbed his arm. "What is going on? Why would a beacon activate without a distress call?" Daewon looked at her directly. His eyes were cold in a way she had never seen before. "Because someone does not want the instructors to know there is a problem. They activated it manually so medical teams would find the location later, but not too soon. That is against every protocol. That is murder, Daewon finished. Or close enough. The word hung in the hot desert air. Shadowstep spoke up from nearby. The Kargath in Squad 12. They have been hostile to the Veloxian. We have all seen it. Instructors monitor everything, Boulder rumbled. They would intervene. The Razor Canyon's block signals, Daewon said. Magnetic interference. The instructors have blind spots. And look at these coordinates. Right at the edge of one of those blind spots. Quick Strike clicked rapidly. Shadowstep translated. He says there was a 30-minute window yesterday when Squad 12 signals dropped completely. He was monitoring communications during his watch. Daewon finished adjusting his pack. He took extra water from the cache supplies. He checked his knife one more time. I am going. You can continue the trial without me. You are a strong squad. You will pass, Bitna stood in his way. Or we all go together. We investigate the beacon. If someone is hurt, helping them is not against the spirit of the trial. Your squad could fail because of me. Our squad will fail if we let someone die when we could have helped. Bitna looked at the others. Vote, who goes to check the beacon? Every hand went up. Daewon felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. Thank you. Thank us by moving fast, Bitna said. We have a long walk ahead. They found Hana on the 4th day. She was in a shallow cave, barely conscious, her violet scales stained with dark blood. Her right arm was bent at an angle that made Daewon's stomach turn. Her ribs looked broken. Deep cuts covered her body. Daewon dropped to his knees beside her. Hana, can you hear me? Her large eyes opened slowly. They focused on his face. Daewon. Her voice was barely a whisper. How? Does not matter. I am here now. He pulled out his medical supplies, hands shaking as he started treating her wounds. Bitna knelt beside him, helping. What happened? Bitna asked gently. Hana's eyes filled with tears. They said I would slow them down. That I did not belong on this trial, Throm said. She coughed and blood appeared on her lips. He said they would make sure I never passed. They would tell the instructors I fell. That the desert took me. Who did this? Daewon's voice was very quiet. Very calm. Throm, Grix, Valdis. The other two just watched. They beat me until I could not stand. Then they left me. Her voice broke. I crawled for 2 days trying to find shade. I thought I would die here. Alone. Daewon's hands stopped shaking. In fact, they became perfectly steady as he finished bandaging her wounds. You will not die. Bitna is going to activate your emergency distress signal. Medical evacuation will be here within an hour. But you will fail the trial. I do not care about the trial. Hana's eyes widened as she looked at his face. Whatever she saw there made her shudder. Daewon, what are you going to do? He stood up slowly. He turned to Bitna. Get her ready for evacuation. Make sure she is stable. What about you? Daewon's expression was empty. Cold. I am going to find Squad 12. That is not your mission. Yes, Daewon said quietly. It is. He walked to the cave entrance and looked out at the desert. The desert sun was high when Daewon began walking. He moved at a steady pace that ate up kilometers without exhausting him. This was something his grandfather had taught him during the unification conflicts back on Earth. How to move like you could walk forever. How to save energy for when you needed it most. The Razor Canyons appeared on the horizon after 3 hours. They were called Razor for good reason. Sharp rock formations jutted up from the red sand like broken blades. The wind had carved them over thousands of years into shapes that looked almost intentional, almost hostile. Daewon checked his navigation device. Squad 12's last signal had come from deep inside the canyon system. He studied the terrain carefully, noting the paths between the rocks, the shadows that could hide someone, the high ground that would provide advantage. Then he disabled his communication device. Not completely. He left the emergency functions active in case medical needed to reach him. But everything else went dark. No tracking. No monitoring. No instructors watching. He was alone now. Exactly how he needed to be. At the academy, Instructor Yan sat in the monitoring station, watching multiple screens that showed different squad positions. She was responsible for overseeing the western sector of the trial. When she noticed Daewon's signal disappear, she leaned forward. Technical, I need a status check on Cadet Daewon. Squad 7, she said into her communicator. Signal shows as manually disabled, instructor. Only emergency functions remain active. Jan frowned. She pulled up Squad 7's recent activity. They had deviated from their planned route yesterday. They had found Squad 12's beacon. They had called for medical evacuation for Cadet Hana, and then Day Wan had left the group. She switched to the medical team's report. What she read made her blood run cold. The injuries described on Cadet Hana were not consistent with environmental hazards. They were consistent with assault. "Get me Commander Vrock immediately," she said. "We have a situation developing." Day Wan entered the Razor Canyons as the sun began its descent. The temperature was dropping, but he barely noticed. His mind was focused on the task ahead. He had studied the canyon system during his academy classes. He knew there were 3 main routes through it and a dozen smaller paths. He knew where water collected in natural pools. He knew where predators made their dens. He knew how to find people who did not want to be found. The first sign came an hour into the canyons. Boot prints in the sand, heavy and deep. Kargath prints, 5 sets. They were moving east, taking the main route toward their next objective. They were in no hurry. They thought they had all the time in the world. They were wrong. Day Wan followed the prints silently. He moved from shadow to shadow, using the rocks for cover. His grandfather's training came back like muscle memory. How to read terrain, how to anticipate paths, how to become invisible in plain sight. Earth was a death world, his grandfather had told him once. Every animal on it learned to hunt or be hunted. Humans learned to do both. Never forget that, boy. Peace is a choice we make. But the ability to do violence? That is in our bones. Day One had tried to forget. He had come to the academy to be more than a weapon, to prove humans could choose differently. But now, walking through these canyons with purpose, he remembered everything. Night fell. The temperature dropped sharply. Day One pulled his jacket tighter but did not slow down. He could see a glow ahead, firelight. Squad 12 had made camp in a sheltered area between high canyon walls. Smart positioning, defensible. Only one approach. Day One circled the camp, moving high along the canyon rim. He moved in complete silence, testing each foothold before putting weight on it. Above the camp, he found a position that let him see everything. 5 Kargath sat around the fire. He recognized Throm, Grix, and Valdis immediately. The other 2 he had seen around the academy but did not know by name. They were eating rations and talking loudly, their voices echoing off the canyon walls. Probably dead by now, Valdis was saying. The desert does not forgive weakness. Should have left her closer to the dropship, one of the unknown Kargath said. Would have looked more like an accident. Throm laughed, a harsh sound. Who cares how it looks? A Veloxian died in the desert. Everyone will believe it. Their species is not built for this. Still, Grix added, we should be careful. That human Day One, he and the scale were close. The human is average at best. He would not dare challenge Kargath warriors. He knows his place. Day One listened to every word. He watched them laugh. He watched them celebrate leaving his best friend to die. And something inside him, something he had kept locked away for 6 months, broke free. He did not feel angry. Anger was hot, uncontrolled, wasteful. What he felt was cold, precise, pure. He climbed down from his position, moving around to the camp's perimeter. They had set up motion sensors at the main entrance. Simple devices that would beep if someone walked past them. Standard academy equipment. Day One studied them for 30 seconds, then disabled each one without triggering a single alert. His hands moved with practiced efficiency. This was basic infiltration, the kind of thing he had learned before he was 15. He moved deeper into the camp's perimeter. There were supply packs stacked near the fire, weapons laid out for easy access, everything organized and military proper. He took his combat knife from its sheath. The blade caught the firelight for just a moment, then he retreated back into the darkness to wait. An hour later, Grix stood up and stretched. I need to check the perimeter, he announced. 3rd time today. Better to be cautious. He picked up his weapon and walked toward where the sensors were placed. Day One watched him approach, watched him check the devices, saw him nod in satisfaction that they were still active. Grix turned to head back to camp. Day One stepped out of the shadows behind him. It was over in 3 seconds. Day One moved with speed that seemed impossible for someone his size. One hand covered Grix's mouth. The other struck pressure points on his neck that his grandfather had shown him years ago. Grix's eyes rolled back and he went limp. Daewon lowered him to the ground silently. He did not kill him. That would have been easy, but it was not his goal. He used Grix's own equipment to bind his hands and feet. He used a climbing cord to haul the unconscious Kargath up the canyon wall, hanging him from a secure point 10 meters above the ground. Then he carved a message in the sand at the spot where Grix had fallen. A single word. Run. Back at the camp, Valdis looked up from the fire. Grix is taking long, Throm shrugged. He probably stopped to relieve himself. Give him time. 5 minutes passed. 10, 15. This is taking too long, Valdis said, standing. I will check on him. He walked in the direction Grix had gone. The other 3 Kargath remained by the fire, unconcerned. Valdis found the message first. He saw the word carved in the sand and stopped walking. His 4 eyes scanned the darkness around him. Grix, he called out. This is not funny. No response. He looked up and saw Grix hanging from the canyon wall, unconscious but alive, suspended like a trophy. Intruder. Valdis shouted, raising his weapon. Someone is in the camp! But Daewon was already moving. He came from the side where Valdis was not looking. His kick took the Kargath in the knee, a perfectly placed strike that would have shattered a human leg. Kargath bones were stronger, but the joint still buckled. Valdis roared and swung his weapon. Daewon was not there anymore. He had moved inside the swing, too close for the weapon to be effective. His elbow struck Valdis's throat. Not hard enough to kill, but hard enough to take away his breath. As Valdis gasped for air, Daewon swept his legs. The large Kargath hit the ground hard. Before he could recover, Daewon was on him, striking nerve clusters with surgical precision. One by one, Valdis's limbs stopped responding. You left her to die, Daewon said quietly. His voice was calm, empty. You thought she was weak, but you are the weak ones. You could not feel strong without hurting someone smaller than you. Valdis's eyes were wide with fear and pain. He tried to speak, but his throat was not working properly yet. Daewon stood up. He looked down at the paralyzed Kargath. You do not get to die. You get to explain what you did. You get to face justice. He activated Valdis's emergency beacon, ensuring medical teams would find him. Then he walked back toward the camp, where Throm and the other 2 Kargath were gathering their weapons and preparing for battle. Throm saw him emerge from the darkness and laughed. The average human comes to play hero. You made a mistake coming here alone, Daewon. Daewon said nothing. He simply walked forward, his combat knife in one hand, his other hand empty and relaxed. I will enjoy this, Throm said, raising his weapon. I will tell them you attacked us in the desert, that we were forced to defend ourselves. No one will question warriors killing a rogue cadet. Daewon stopped walking. He stood in the firelight completely calm. You hurt my best friend. You thought you could get away with it. We did get away with it. The scale is probably dead already. She is alive, because I found her, because I saved her. Daewon's eyes met Throm's. And now I am going to teach you what happens when you hurt someone a human cares about, Throm charged. What happened next would become a story told throughout the academy for years to come. How a human cadet faced 3 Kargath warriors in the... Throm was fast for his size. The Kargath warrior crossed the distance between them in 3 powerful strides, his weapon raised high. He brought it down in an arc that would have crushed Daewon's skull, but Daewon was not there. He had moved left, just enough that the weapon struck sand instead of flesh. Before Throm could recover, Daewon's knife flashed out, cutting through the straps that held Throm's armor in place. The chest piece fell away, leaving vulnerable gray skin exposed. Throm spun faster than expected, his backhand connecting with Daewon's shoulder. The impact sent the human stumbling back. Pain exploded through his arm. That would bruise badly. The 2 other Kargath were circling now, trying to flank him. Daewon kept moving, using the firelight to his advantage, keeping all 3 enemies in his line of sight. You are fast, Throm admitted, breathing hard. But speed will not save you. You are 1. We are 3. Numbers do not matter, Daewon said quietly. Not when you are already defeated. One of the other Kargath laughed. Big words from a small human. He charged from the left. Daewon dropped low, sweeping the Kargath's legs. As the warrior fell, Daewon rose and drove his elbow into the back of his opponent's head. The Kargath hit the ground and did not get up immediately, but the third one was on him now, grabbing Daewon from behind in a crushing hold. Kargath's strength was real. Daewon felt his ribs creak under the pressure. He snapped his head back, connecting with his attacker's face. Then he stomped down hard on the Kargath's instep. The grip loosened slightly. Daewon twisted, using technique over strength, and slipped out of the hold. As he spun free, his knife opened a long cut across the Kargath's arm. The warrior roared in pain and rage. Throm came at him again, this time more cautiously. He was starting to understand that Daewon was not what he appeared to be. This was not an average cadet. This was someone who had hidden their true skill. "Who are you?" Throm demanded. "Humans do not fight like this." "I am exactly what humans are," Daewon replied. He was breathing harder now, but his voice remained calm. "We are kind. We are gentle. We choose peace whenever possible. But when you hurt someone we love, we become something else entirely." They circled each other. The two other Kargath were getting back to their feet, injured but still dangerous. "This is for her broken arm," Daewon said, and moved. His strikes were precise, targeted. He was not trying to kill. He was trying to hurt. Every blow he landed, he named. Every injury he inflicted, he dedicated. This is for her broken ribs, a kick to Throm's side that cracked. Bone. This is for leaving her alone in the desert. A strike that shattered the Kargath's weapon hand. This is for thinking compassion is weakness. A combination that left Throm on his knees, blood running from his mouth. The other two Kargath tried to help their leader, but Daewon was everywhere. He used the canyon walls, bouncing between rocks, using three-dimensional movement that the heavy warriors could not match. He was bleeding now from several wounds. His jacket was torn. His own ribs might be cracked, but he did not stop. "Please," one of the Kargath finally gasped. He was on the ground, his legs broken in 3 places. "Please, enough." Daewon stood over him, covered in blood and sand. Some of the blood was his. Most of it was not. "Did you stop when Hana asked you to? Did you show mercy when she begged?" The Kargath had no answer. Throm tried to stand one more time. His pride would not let him stay down. He was a Kargath warrior. He had been trained since birth for combat. He could not lose to one human, but he was losing. Daewon caught him as he tried to charge again. This time there was no technique, no fancy moves, just raw human endurance and determination. They grappled in the sand. Throm's superior strength against Daewon's superior skill. "You do not understand," Daewon said, his voice strained with effort. "Humans survived a death world. We survived ice ages and plagues. We survived predators that should have eaten us. We survived other humans in wars that should have destroyed us. We do not give up. We do not stop. Not when something matters." He broke Throm's grip. His fist struck the Kargath's face once, twice, 3 times. Each impact made a sound like breaking stone. "Hana matters," Daewon said. "She is my friend. My best friend. And you tried to kill her because you thought she was weak. Because you thought being peaceful meant being powerless." Throm fell backward into the sand. He tried to rise, but his body would not obey anymore. Blood ran from a dozen wounds. His 4 eyes struggled to focus on Daewon's face above him. "You are going to live," Daewon said, his voice cold and final. "All of you are going to live. Because I want you to explain what you did. I want you to face justice. I want everyone to know what kind of warriors you really are." He activated emergency beacons for all 3 Kargath. Then he sat down heavily on a rock, his adrenaline finally fading, pain rushing in to replace it. The sun was starting to rise. The first light touched the tops of the canyon walls, turning them golden. The sand around the camp was dark with blood. Red on red, Daewon looked at his hands. They were shaking now, covered in cuts and bruises. His knuckles were raw and bleeding. He had hurt people badly tonight. He had given in to the violence he had tried so hard to leave behind. But when he thought of Hana lying in that cave, broken and alone, he could not bring himself to regret it. The sound of engines reached his ears. Rescue ships were coming, following the emergency beacons. They would be here soon. Daewon stood up slowly. Everything hurt. He walked to where his canteen had fallen during the fight and took a long drink of water. Then he sat back down to wait. The first ship arrived 15 minutes later. Instructor Yeon was on it, along with medical personnel and security officers. She took one look at the scene and her face went pale. 3 Kargath cadets on the ground, severely injured but alive. One human cadet sitting on a rock covered in blood and sand, completely calm. "Cadet Day 1, she said carefully. "What happened here?" Day 1 looked up at her. His eyes were tired but clear. "They hurt my best friend. They left her to die in the desert. I found them. I made sure they will never hurt anyone again." Security officers moved forward, but Yeon held up her hand. She walked closer to Day 1, studying his face. "Did you kill any of them?" "No, they are all alive. I called for medical extraction for each one." He met her eyes. "I did not want them dead. I wanted them to face justice." Yeon looked at the 3 injured Kargath, at the blood in the sand, at the evidence of a fight that had been completely one-sided once it truly began. "You did this alone? All 3 of them?" "There were 5, Day 1 corrected. 2 are outside the camp, also alive, also with active beacons." One of the security officers returned from checking the perimeter. His face was shocked. "Instructor, he is telling the truth. 2 more Kargath secured outside the camp. One was hung from the canyon wall. The other was paralyzed and left with supplies." Yeon was quiet for a long moment. "Cadet Day 1, I need to place you under arrest pending investigation. Do you understand?" "Yes, instructor. Do you have anything to say?" Day 1 stood up slowly, wincing at the pain in his ribs. He looked at the rising sun, at the red sand stretching endlessly around them. "Humans are kind," he said quietly. "We choose peace. We value life. But we also protect those we love. With everything we have, with everything we are." He turned back to Yeon. "They tried to murder Hana because they saw her gentleness as weakness. I showed them what happens when you mistake human restraint for inability." Medical teams were loading the injured Kargath onto stretchers. One of them was conscious enough to speak. "He is a monster," the Kargath whispered. "Not human, monster." Day 1 heard this and shook his head. "Not a monster. Just a human who was reminded why our ancestors survived when everything tried to kill them. We adapted. We endured. And we protected our pack." Yeon gestured to the security officers. "Take him into custody, gently. Medical needs to check him as well." As they led him to the transport ship, Day 1 looked back at the canyon one last time. At the place where he had let go of the person he was trying to be and became the person he needed to be. The human who painted the sands red to protect his friend. On the transport ship, strapped into a seat with security officers watching him, Day 1 closed his eyes. His body was exhausted. His hands would not stop shaking. But somewhere in this desert, Hana was alive. Safe. Rescued. That was all that mattered. The ship lifted off, carrying him toward whatever consequences awaited. He did not know if he would be expelled, arrested, or worse. He did not care. He had kept his promise. The twin suns climbed higher in the sky, and the red sands of the scorched wastes glowed like fire. The story of what happened in the Razor Canyons would spread quickly. How a human cadet faced 5 Kargath warriors. How he won not through size or strength, but through skill, determination, and something the galaxy had forgotten about humans. That underneath their kindness, underneath their desire for peace, humans were survivors from a death world, and when you threatened what they loved, they would remind you why their planet tried so hard to kill them and failed. The tribunal chamber was silent as Day 1 entered. His hands were bound, not with regular restraints, but with special security cuffs designed to hold dangerous prisoners. He wore a simple gray uniform instead of his academy colors. 2 security officers flanked him as he walked to the center of the room. The chamber was circular, with seats rising in tiers around him. At the highest level sat Admiral Taemin, a human officer with silver hair and sharp eyes. To his left sat Ambassador Syrinx, a Veloxian diplomat with deep blue scales. On his right sat Commander Vrock and several other Academy officials. Dozens of other beings filled the remaining seats. Representatives from different species, military observers, legal experts. This was not just a simple Academy disciplinary hearing. This had become something much bigger. Day 1 stood straight despite his injuries. Medical had treated the worst of his wounds, but he was still bruised and moving carefully. His ribs were cracked in 2 places. His hands were bandaged. His face bore several cuts that would scar. "This tribunal will come to order," Admiral Taemin announced. His voice carried through the chamber without need for amplification. "We are here to determine the actions and fate of Cadet Day 1 of Earth, concerning events that occurred during the trial of Sands." He looked down at Day 1. Cadet, you understand the charges against you? Unauthorized deviation from your assigned squad. Assault on fellow cadets. Violating trial protocols. These are serious charges that could result in expulsion, criminal prosecution, or both. I understand, Admiral. Daewon replied. His voice was calm. How do you plead? Guilty to unauthorized deviation and violating protocols. Not guilty to assault. A murmur went through the chamber. Vrock leaned forward. You admit to attacking 5 Kargath warriors but claim it was not assault? I claim it was justice, Commander. They attempted to murder Cadet Hana. I stopped them and ensured they would face consequences for their actions. That was not your decision to make, Vrock shouted. You are a cadet, not a judge. Then why did no one else stop them? Daewon's eyes swept the chamber. They hurt Hana over the course of weeks. Multiple cadets witnessed it. Multiple instructors were informed. Nothing was done. They were placed in her squad despite clear hostility. When they left her to die, the systems failed to detect it immediately. So yes, I made a decision. I decided that my friend's life mattered more than academy rules. Admiral Taemin held up a hand for silence. We will review the evidence systematically. Instructor Yan, present your findings. Yan stood from her seat in the lower tier. She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The evidence clearly shows premeditated attempted murder by Squad 12's Kargath members against Cadet Hana. The display showed footage from various sources. Communication logs showing Throm and his group discussing their plans. Equipment logs showing they deliberately disabled certain safety features. Medical reports detailing Hana's injuries, which were absolutely inconsistent with environmental causes. They planned this for weeks. Yan continued. They ensured they were placed in her squad. They waited until they entered a signal blind spot. They beat her systematically, then left her with just enough supplies to survive a few days if she was lucky. They activated a location beacon manually instead of a distress signal, ensuring medical would find her body eventually but not soon enough to save her. More images appeared. Hana in the cave, broken and bleeding. The medical team's report estimating she had perhaps 24 hours left before organ failure. Cadet Daewon found her with approximately 8 hours to spare, Yan said quietly. His actions saved her life. Ambassador Cyrix spoke, his voice musical but filled with pain. My people have a saying, violence against the gentle is violence against all. What was done to Cadet Hana was not just assault. It was an attempt to exterminate someone for being different, for being peaceful. He looked at Daewon. But violence in response to violence is not our way. The Veloxian people teach forgiveness, compassion. What do you say to this, human? Daewon met the ambassador's eyes. With respect, Ambassador, I am not Veloxian. I am human. And humans protect their friends. We do not wait for systems to work when someone we love is dying. We act. By nearly killing 5 cadets? By ensuring they will never hurt anyone again, Daewon corrected. I did not kill them. I could have. I chose not to, but I made sure they understood the consequences of their cruelty. Admiral Taemin tapped his console. Let us address something that has not been discussed publicly. Instructor Yan, show them Cadet Daewon's real combat assessment. Another holographic display appeared. This one showed test scores, evaluations, classified reports. Daewon's academy scores were average, middle tier, unremarkable, but beneath those scores was another set of data. Before entering the academy, all human cadets undergo evaluation by Earth's military, Yan explained. These evaluations are classified but can be accessed by senior command. Cadet Daewon's true combat rating is not middle tier. It is extreme threat level. Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. Extreme threat level is reserved for individuals capable of engaging multiple opponents with high success rates. Admiral Taemin said, It means Cadet Daewon has training and skills far beyond typical military cadets. He deliberately suppressed these abilities during academy training. He looked directly at Daewon. Why? Why hide what you could do? For the first time, emotion showed on Daewon's face. Pain. Old pain. Because I wanted to be more than a weapon, Admiral. I grew up in Earth's post-war zones. I was trained to fight before I was trained to read. My grandfather was a soldier. My father was a soldier. Violence was all I knew. He took a breath. I came to the academy to prove that humans could choose differently, that we could be peaceful, that we could be more than the death world warriors everyone expects us to be. So I hid my skills. I made myself average. I tried to be someone who solved problems with words instead of fists. And then they hurt Hana. Ambassador Cyrix said softly. And then they hurt Hana. Daiwan agreed. And I realized that choosing peace does not mean accepting injustice. It does not mean watching someone you love die because you do not want to be violent. Real strength is not about never using force. It is about choosing when and how to use it. Admiral Taman studied him for a long moment. What you did was illegal under Academy regulations. You abandoned your squad. You tracked down other cadets. You attacked them. Yes, Admiral. But what they did was attempted murder, and the systems we put in place to prevent such things failed. They failed because we assumed the Academy itself would be enough. That instructors watching monitors would be enough. That protocols would be enough. He stood and everyone in the chamber rose with him. The Kargath cadets will be expelled and face criminal charges. Commander Vrock will be removed from his position for negligence in addressing repeated harassment complaints. Academy protocols will be revised to prevent signal blind spots during trials. He looked at Daiwan. As for you, Cadet, you violated regulations. But you saved a life, you stopped murderers, and you showed restraint even in your violence. Therefore, this tribunal rules as follows. You will receive an official censure on your record for protocol violations. You will not be expelled. You will not face criminal charges. Daiwan's eyes widened slightly. Admiral. However, Taman continued, you will spend the next month working with the Academy's counseling staff. You will learn to balance the warrior you are with the peacemaker you wish to be, because the galaxy needs both. We need humans who can choose peace, but we also need humans who can act when peace fails. He sat back down. This tribunal is concluded. As the chamber emptied, Daiwan remained standing in the center, processing what had just happened. He was not expelled. He was not arrested. He would continue at the Academy, but the person he had been trying to become was gone. He could not pretend to be average anymore. Everyone knew now. Daiwan? He turned. Hana stood in the doorway, supported by medical assistants. Her arm was in a regenerative cast. Her ribs were wrapped, but she was standing. She was alive. The security officers removed his cuffs and stepped back, giving them space. Hana walked slowly toward him. Each step looked painful, but she did not stop until she stood directly in front of him. You did not have to do what you did, she said quietly. Yes, I did. You could have been expelled, arrested. I know. She reached up with her good hand and touched his face gently. Thank you for showing them that soft things can have sharp protectors, for proving that my friend was never average, that he was extraordinary. I am not extraordinary, Daiwan said. I am just human. Exactly, Hana replied, her large eyes bright. You are human. You chose kindness every day for 6 months. You only chose violence when it was necessary to save a life. That is what makes you extraordinary. They stood together in the empty tribunal chamber. Two friends from different worlds who had learned something important about each other and themselves. 3 weeks later, Daiwan returned to regular academy training. But things were different now. Other cadets gave him space. Some looked at him with fear, some with respect, none with dismissal. The story of what happened in the Razor Canyons had spread through the